So we got to adjust this back a little bit here. Just changing the depth, and you can see right here the small triangles.
We are going to use a seatbelt on all customers that we use. Sometimes people get startled, and you don't want them to get startled and change the position once you get started. You're also going to talk to the client while they're in the chair, and you're going to tell them what you're going to do. You're not going to start putting your hands on them and so that. And we're going to basically bring the seat up a little bit. All right, so we're going to basically do that. In general, we're going to start with the seat first. There are exceptions, but we're going to start with the seat first. And we're going to position the person how we want to position them. And
if you can put their feet up on a block, it's better.
yeah, I have footrests on, but we're going to, for purposes of doing this, we're going to do that. I typically do about one full pass to kind of like pull the beads where I want them, and then I come around and start getting it in a more position that I want.
Now, Carrie, if you had somebody that had a molded system before a tilt and space chair, would you measure the angle on that chair and then adjust your angle accordingly here, or is it?
How well that system's working?
No, I would not.
Okay.
I would always see, so anytime I'm providing a brand new chair or a seating system, you always want to look at the person as they are today, not the way they were 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So if you can improve it, I used to have an issue going to one facility, office, doctor's office, whatever, that if someone sat that way and their chair came in, they figured that that was the best that they could do and they want to duplicate it. And so what would happen is, if the posture was like this, they would always be molded like that, and every once in a while, you could actually sit them more upright. And it's just something happened over time, and so you want to look at people individually every single time as they are today.
So that's a key tip. Make sure you look at how they are today, not how they were sitting in the past.
And so when you get personal, you want to basically let people know you're going to be personal. And so when we do an abductor, we're going to basically say, excuse my hands, I am going to get personal with you, and we're going to basically get in here and pull the abductor up.
Now notice the sweat. If you're not sweating, you're probably not doing a good job.
So you want to make sure when you're building an abductor up, it's not right in their crotch. No, you're right. This process, it might not look like it's hard, but you're pulling and you're working. Yeah. And if a client has high tone, you're working even harder because you're fighting against their movement. All right, so you're going to build up the abductor, and then like I said, if you want something that's much bigger, you're going to probably start with something, a prompt, to build this up even bigger. And an abductor is not meant to keep someone from sliding. It's meant to keep their knees apart or in position. But that being the case, with molded seating, if you mold it in a gentle, gradual slope, part of the abductor, not the actual piece, will create an anti-thrust, and it will help with reduction of sliding in most cases.
If you're going to be doing someone who needs a lot of anti-thrust, you can also, before you put them on there,
put a foam underneath.
Put a foam block underneath it, and it'll raise up the front, so you don't have to fight the beads to stay up higher.
It's a great tip. All right. So we're going to do this, and when you're doing the seat, you kind of want to think if you're going to put seatbelt notches in or not. Seatbelt notches, you can actually create a notch for the seatbelt to go through. Generally, I don't make hip guides high enough that you need to make the notches. There are certain people that you make hip guides or thigh guides so high that if you put the belt over it, there's a big gap. My hip guides and thigh guides tend to be there's exceptions, but I typically only come up enough to hold the legs in place. I try not to overkill the molds if I don't have to. Demo mold. The other thing that I see a lot is most people that are sitting in molds have a tendency of having a little bit of a kyphosis. When I'm done with my mold, I always try to flatten out the top. As someone tilts back in their chair, you want to get whatever extension they can. And so you want to be careful of not making that big round, at least at the top. You want to make sure that you kind of, what I do is I have whoever's in the back, generally just take them and just kind of hold them back so the back kind of flattens out at the top. And then we push all of the beads in, and we get it really nice and tight up to the back of the pelvis and up in there, and then we kind of bring them back, and it will actually create that shape. Back. Usually, like I said, someone is holding from the back, and then I'm working, and there is a technique with your hands And so I'm putting my hand behind the person and from the back and kind of pulling the beads. I want to make sure that there's contact from the back all the way around. If you just start pushing the beads up against someone, you're going to have gaps and it's going to be more flat instead of actually rounded to the bottom. And for what it's worth, this back height is short, so like I would have raised the back up more to make sure that I had the beads all the way up closer to his shoulder. So just kind of a heads up on that.
So how firm is the bag that you're working with right now?
This is like 3/4 soft, and I'm just making sure that I have all the beads touching his back, and like Gene said, making sure all the wrinkles are coming out of the bags. Fingernails and jewelry will rip the bags. And the more that you suck the air out, the faster the bag rips.
That's a bad day. That's a bad day. Bad day.
And it takes a while to replace the beads in the bags, so you're done for the day. You're not doing that at someone's house.
A bad day.
So you're looking for maximum contact. You've got all the beads against the back.
Yeah, and so like what Gene said earlier is a really good point, is we're not flat creatures. So as soon as your body starts kind of coming around, you don't need to make your laterals more than the apex of the contours like what he's saying. There are people that just pull bags and make them as deep as possible, which makes issues for transfers, caregivers trying to get them over and into the chair right, makes it a lot harder.
Try to get a sling out. Try to get a sling out.
All of the above.
Yeah.
So don't overkill them. When you see molds that are super big, it's usually just because someone just said, I want the lateral so big. And it's usually therapist, family, or doctor that's requested.
How do I feel as far as I'm like
Oh,
support?
it's like a big hug.
When you're getting close to being done, when you're close to being done and you have the person here, you want to make sure you guys know about when someone's curved, how you want to like position them. It's not always the laterals are even.
Correct.
You guys know that?
Yeah.
So when you're done from the front, I typically always sit here and I look at how they're sitting, and I'll grab the bag with my hand and I'll hold them here and wherever they need it to hold them and straighten them out, and then I'll have someone lock down the bag.
You can see the
And
bag
when you
starting
do
to pull here.
that, are you guys head and shoulder straight? Because if you go with the hips straight, someone's always going to try to turn their head to align themselves, and you're going to create more curves. So I typically always keep head and shoulders midline straight. I want to keep your vital organs, your breathing, your heart, your digestion stuff. I want to keep that as straight as possible. If that means letting the legs kind of go to the side, so be it.
Sometimes you gotta split the difference.
Right. Now the other thing with obliquities, obviously if someone's very oblique and they're heavy on one side, you may need to do a recess, do a soft area, because they might stack to that position. The other thing is there's certain people that are so oblique. And when I say so oblique, it's the textbook ones that literally their pelvis and their rib cage are almost joined together, they're crunched together. You might end up considering tilting more laterally. There's some chairs that you can tilt laterally. Make sense? But the last thing I do on the molded seating system is, like I said, I sit from the front and I push them kind of forward to try to keep I look at their shoulders, I look at their center line, and try to get them as straight as possible. I've never been really successful just holding all the shape and kind of, guessing. I really have to get in there and kind of push and get that alignment. Cool? I'm going to take pictures of how he sits. I'm going to take one from the front, and I'm going to take one from the side. The manufacturer doesn't typically require that anymore, but it's good for me because when we're building the chairs, we can look at where the foot position is if we're putting different foot positioners on, and it helps basically guide. So we're going to take one from the front. When we're taking pictures, I try to get to the level of the line. So I don't know how much photography background you guys have, but I want not distorted pictures. If I take a picture on an angle, it's going to distort. So I want a level line this way and a level line on the side to take pictures. Right?
Did your point of view is straight on? Of your
I want to mark the top of the cushion with a piece of Play-Doh.
Even if you have the tape?
You have to.
So this is why. So my mentality is, I mark it with the tape. Why not, right?
Yeah.
When they do the digitizing, it's a total smooth surface, and so they need something to break the surface to identify where the top is.
Can't you just stick a pin in there or something?
Yeah, your pin works good.
We started getting mold.
So in the case of someone that had a bony area where they want to make a soft spot, you want to basically create some points of where you want it to stop. The other thing is, if you want to like not give anybody a choice of determining what you want, since we were extending the seat, I may actually put one here and say it was from that point, pulling it 2 inches, and that point. That way, you're choosing.
Once that was 2.5.
Right, but so on the order form, it's going to say that, but that's going to be the landmark that they use to do it. I mean, if your fronts are jagged, you may want to specifically tell them from what position you want it to be extended from.
So mark it with this Play-Doh too.
Now, if you want a soft spot and you wanted to create like a well in the back that was a soft spot, you can basically create some dots and make a semicircular or a round area that you want to be soft spotted.
And what would the purpose of a soft spot be? When would you use something like that?
I'm not a big fan of soft spots. The only time I do it is typically for someone that has such a significant obliquity that that they're going to break down. But here's the problem: you put a soft spot in, and they have an obliquity, they're going to sink more into that shape. If you soft spot just the posterior area, you will create a little bit more anti-thrust. That might be an advantage. But I typically overlay the entire cushion with the soft visco foam because I want it to be smooth all the way across. I don't want to create any kind of voids or ups or downs, because if they do slide, just like a J cushion or something like that, if their tendency is to slide, they hit the slope. That's going to be a possible area for syndrome. There's only a couple places that ask for vinyl covers. Every ones that I do now and will go on the order form. The best success I've had is I cushion with this visco foam overlay. It gives a little bit of forgiveness factor. It takes a little bit of pressure off, and it's, if someone doesn't put them exactly right, there's a little bit of fudge factor there. I always put the stretchable incontinent cover, and we'll go through the order form. And the reason why I do that is, years ago I only did pan-mounted cushions. You guys know what the difference between pan-mounted and wood mount is? So pan mount is the cushion sits in a metal pan and you have to push it down into the pan. The sides of the pan will actually protect the cushion, so if someone bumps into it, you have the protection of the pan to protect it. Wood mounts are going to be just like a plainer cushion. The bottom is wood mount, the cushion is built on top of that. If someone bumps into a cushion, they can get chunks pulled out of the cushion and stuff like that. So all the cushions I've done over the last 5 years have had inner incontinent liners. And I use them not so much to protect the foam from incontinence, of more if they get a glancing blow, that keeps the foam integrity longer, more durable. Here's the negative. On cushions, anytime you add any kind of layers to cushions and covers, you are reducing some of the benefits of the foam. So even though they're stretchy covers, if someone's really high sensitive with skin breakdown, I'm probably not going to put an incontinent liner on a naked foam cushion cover, and I'm going to just basically let that spray coating that they use on them hold up, because you're going to get the better pressure benefits of that. Does that make sense?
So they have a blue
cushion, little dots. Now here's the other thing you can do is you want to be really creative. You can take a Rojo bladder, you know, like the hybrid cushions, and you could basically throw a Rojo bladder in there and then mark around it. Then they can make a recess to put a Rojo bladder in there. Again, but you gotta be careful. Gel and air bladders have to be maintained. Sometimes people don't pay any attention once they're in a molded seating system to maintain it. So again, you gotta be really careful.
What does that pump up at?
So what they'll do is they're good enough that they can basically take and run the valve through the cushion and run it up. So the new system's through a scanning process. So on the iPad, you basically have you bring it up. There's a camera on the back of the iPad, and you want to make sure that the shading. And I'm kind of in this room short. There we go. So I'm going to grab that, and you want to make sure the front of the cushion gets captured, and then you're going to you're making a snowman essentially. You want to make sure all the seating surfaces are covered in white. Now what's kind of interesting is there's another company that uses something very similar to this, but you have to be really slow and methodical on how to capture it. for whatever reason, the technology in this one is you can kind of move at different speeds, and as long as you get everything filled in, you're golden. We're going to basically click on it and hit cloud processing. And at this point, this is when I usually set this down, and that's when I'm measuring. So I do it in steps, capture shape, do my measuring because I have to wait for that to capture. If you're in someone's house and you can't pick up a Wi-Fi, you can use your phone as a hotspot if you can do that. And I'm always doing this at the house. Once it's in there, supposedly you're good and golden and you can do it later. I'm just one of those people that I want to see that everything got captured, because if the lighting is really terrible or something like that, I just want to see that the details all there. I don't want to have to go back.
That's another tip too. If your scanner's not picking up, you always got to make sure that you have enough light.
Yeah, and so many times I'm having people open up the shades, or
Cell phone.
I'm moving the simulator to capture more light. Creative with. So like if you have someone that has a smaller lateral, you can build elbow blocks. You can even build, like if they're small enough,
Armrests.
you can build a armrest in. You know, you can build whatever you want. I've built headrests into them. Mm-hmm. So like whatever you want to be creative with, you can. And there's no reason why you can't tape on pieces of foam, shape them, create them, and then scan it, and it'll all be built into the cushion. Yeah, so I'll pass it around, but just like an iPad, you can look at the cushion and make sure it's what you want.
Sure.
So while this was still solid and tight, if I measure across the laterals, wherever the inner contour is, you need an inch on either side for thickness, roughly.
So an inch on each side?
Right.
So, okay.
So like if for example, if the contour was here and here,